They showed up on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, 4 years after I disappeared, standing in the doorway of the business I built without them. My mother's eyes went straight to tears. My father's went straight to my desk. And Julian stood behind them in a designer jacket that cost more than his last semester's tuition, which someone else had paid for too. My mother said, "Poppy, we've been looking for you for years. How could you just abandon your family like that?" I didn't stand up. I didn't raise my voice. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out a binder I had been keeping for exactly this moment. 9 years of their summer vacation receipts. Their beach photos. Their 5-star hotel bookings. All itemized. All dated. All right there in their hands. I said, "You didn't sacrifice anything for me." There are 63 pages in that binder. And not one of them has my name on a boarding pass. My name is Poppy Whitmore. I'm 29 years old. And if you looked at my parents' old photo albums, you would notice something strange. I'm not in a single summer photo. Not one. For 9 years, the family went on without me. The question nobody asked until I made them ask it in that office was where exactly I had been. Welcome to this channel, where the daughters who are quietly set aside come to finally be heard. If you have ever been the one left behind while someone else got the vacation, the attention, the benefit of every doubt, stay with me. Drop a comment with the city you're watching from, because I want to see how far this story travels. Subscribe, because what was in that binder is the reason I'm still here to tell it. Let me go back to the beginning, because what happened in that office only makes sense if you know what happened every June 1st for 9 consecutive years. I grew up in a house that ran on a very simple economy. My younger brother Julian was the investment. I was the overhead. My parents weren't cruel in an obvious way. They fed me, clothed me, kept the lights on. But they had decided, somewhere early on, that Julian was the story of the family and I was the part that got edited out before the final cut. He had the tutors, the hobbies, the sports equipment, the new car conversations at the dinner table. I had the understanding that I should be grateful for the basics and quiet about the rest. I was a good student. I was self-sufficient in the way children become self-sufficient when they figure out early that asking for help costs more than it returns. I didn't understand yet why I felt like a visitor in my own house. I just knew I did. Then, I turned 10, and the pattern became a calendar event. Every year, on exactly June 1st, my parents packed my bags. My mother was efficient about it, folded clothes, toiletries, a book or two. My father loaded everything into the trunk. And then they drove me 4 hours into rural Oregon and left me at my Aunt Martha's property, which was, by any fair description, falling apart at the seams. Peeling paint. A fence that leaned more than it stood. A wood stove that required negotiation to light. Their explanation to neighbors, to teachers, to anyone who asked, was always some variation of, "Poppy just needs more structure than we can give her right now. She's going through a difficult phase. Martha is good for her." The implication being that I was the problem. That I was the one being managed. That this was for my benefit. I believed it for 2 summers. Children will believe almost anything adults say with enough confidence. The truth arrived on a piece of paper during my 5th summer. My mother had printed an email. I still don't know if she left it on Martha's kitchen counter by accident or by complete indifference to whether I found it, and I read it standing there in work boots with sawdust on my hands. It said, "Keep Poppy occupied out there. Julian deserves to experience what it's like to be an only child without her ruining our family dynamic." I read it twice. I folded it. I put it in my back pocket. I went back outside and helped Martha install a load-bearing beam, without saying a single word about what I'd just read. But something finished in me that afternoon. Not broke. Finished, like a calculation that had finally resolved to its actual number. Aunt Martha was not what my parents imagined her to be. They saw a reclusive woman in the woods with a rundown property and a reputation for being odd, and they felt good about themselves for finding somewhere to put me. What they missed, because they never once stayed long enough to look, was that Martha had spent 30 years as a master contractor and a methodical real estate investor who had built every piece of her independence with her own hands and her own reasoning and nobody's permission. She had no illusions about why I arrived every June. During my second summer, she handed me a tool belt, pointed at a wall that needed framing, and said, "They think they're dumping you here to suffer, Poppy, so let's make sure you leave here so strong they can never touch you again." She meant it the way a blueprint means something, precisely, with every measurement accounted for. By the time I was 12, I knew framing, basic electrical, and rough plumbing. By 14, I could read a property deed and understand what I was looking at. Martha explained compound interest with the same patience she used to explain load calculations, because to her, they were the same kind of problem. She showed me what a credit score actually was and what it was for. She showed me what a high-yield savings trust looked like and, without making a ceremony of it, established one in my name with the wages I earned helping her renovate cabins for local property owners. Every dollar I made went in. Every summer I came back, and there was more in it. My two lives ran parallel and never touched. In winter, I was the quiet daughter in the background of a house that didn't see me. In summer, I was someone's apprentice, learning something real, building something that would last. The contrast was a kind of education in itself. My parents, back home, were building Julian, private tutors for subjects he dropped within a month, sports equipment for teams he quit, a lifestyle maintained at a standard that required constant financial input and produced, as far as I could observe, very little in return. They photographed every vacation. They framed the prints. Hawaii, European beaches, 5-star dining rooms, Julian center frame. Grinning, I saw those photos every winter when I came home. They hung on the wall like a gallery of everything I hadn't been invited to. Comment if someone in your life treated your absence like a solution. Comment if you were the child they managed instead of raised. Comment if the thing that was supposed to break you is the thing that actually built you. Subscribe, because what I put in that binder took 9 years to compile. And the next few minutes are why it mattered. The winter I turned 18, I opened a bank account in my name only, at a branch my parents had never used. I told no one. I kept my grades exactly where they needed to be to cost my parents as little argument as possible. They paid my state college tuition, the absolute minimum they calculated they were obligated to provide. And I let them feel generous about it, and asked for nothing else. I was working 2 jobs by my sophomore year. Drafting work. Small renovation contracts I found through Martha's professional network, which she had quietly introduced me to as though she had been planning this handoff for years. Every check went into accounts my parents didn't know existed. The trust Martha had established was growing on its own. Junior year, while Julian was failing out of his second college program and our parents were covering his credit card bills, I bought a duplex in Washington State. Neglected property, below market, needed everything. I renovated it on weekends using skills I had been building since I was 12. By the time I graduated, it was generating rental income. It was a real asset. I owned it outright. My parents did not know any of this. They saw a quiet daughter who asked for nothing and expected less. They interpreted this as confirmation that I had nothing going on. It suited everyone for them to keep thinking that. My graduation fell in late May. 3 weeks before the ceremony, my mother mentioned over dinner, the way you mention a grocery item you forgot to pick up, that they were taking Julian to Italy for a month. He had just finished high school. Barely, but he had. And the family celebration was a luxury tour across the country, beginning 4 days before I was scheduled to walk across a stage with a degree completed with highest honors. My father didn't look up from his phone when I asked about it. "Poppy, you're just getting a bachelor's degree. It's not a big deal. We'll celebrate when we get back." Julian had already ordered a new jacket for the trip. I stood in my cap and gown on graduation day with one person in the bleachers. Aunt Martha had flown in without telling me, and when I saw her there in the 3rd row with a paper program folded in her lap, I understood for the first time in my life what it felt like to be someone's actual priority. She drove me back to my parents' house afterward. She waited in the car while I loaded a moving truck in under 3 hours. I took everything that was mine. I closed the joint account my mother had opened for me years earlier, transferred the balance, and changed my phone number. On the kitchen island, next to the framed Hawaii photo, Julian front and center, my parents beaming, I left a single printed note. It said, "Thank you for paying my basic tuition and funding the education of the daughter you didn't want. Your duty is complete. Do not try to contact me." By sunset, I was in Washington. By the following year, I had launched a boutique design and contracting firm. By the year after that, I was earning six figures. I had a community, a reputation, a life that fit me correctly, built to my own specifications. For 4 years, nobody found me. I wasn't hiding exactly. My business was registered, my name was on the filings. I just wasn't where they thought to look, and they hadn't been looking until they needed something. Julian had flunked out of 2 programs. He had accumulated debts that my parents covered by refinancing their home and pulling from retirement accounts they could not afford to drain. When he kept spending and they kept running out of answers, they started searching. And when they searched for contractors in my region, they found a business registration with a name they recognized. They drove to my office on a Tuesday. It was raining. I was reviewing blueprints when the front door opened. My mother came in first, eyes already filling, my father behind her, still trying to carry the posture of someone accustomed to being listened to. Julian last, in a jacket that cost more than the monthly income of either job I'd worked through college. My mother said, "Poppy, we've been looking for you for years. How could you just abandon your family like that?" I looked at them without getting up. I said, "You're trespassing on private property. What do you want?" My father stepped forward. His voice was a recollection of the authority it used to have. "We're your parents, Poppy. You owe us respect. We found out about your business. You're doing well, and your brother is struggling. We need $150,000 to clear Julian's debts and save our house from foreclosure. We sacrificed everything for you children, and now it's your turn to step up." I want to stop here for a moment. Because some of you watching right now have been in that chair. Not the same office, not the same numbers, but the same sentence. We sacrificed everything. Delivered by someone who spent years making you invisible, as though sacrifice is retroactively created the moment they need something from you. If you have ever sat across from someone who treated your entire childhood as a deposit they forgot to make until they needed the withdrawal, leave a comment. And subscribe, because I need you to see what happened next. I opened my desk drawer. I pulled out a binder. I slid it across the desk toward my father and watched his face as he opened it. Inside, 9 years of summer vacation itineraries, hotel bookings, flight records, destination photos cross-referenced with the specific dates I had been dropped at Martha's property. An itemized column showing estimated total expenditure on Julian's education, extracurriculars, and debt payments versus the sum total they had provided for me, which was 1 semester of state college tuition and a childhood bedroom I was barely permitted to occupy in the winter. 63 pages. Every June 1st accounted for. I said, "You didn't sacrifice anything for me. You dumped me at Aunt Martha's every single summer for 9 years so your son could play only child. You didn't raise me. Martha did. You didn't build this. I built it with the tools you thought you were throwing away." My mother reached across the desk for my hand. "Poppy, please. We made mistakes. But we're still your parents. You can't turn your back on your own blood over childhood grudges." I pulled my hand back. I said, "It's not a grudge, Mom. It's a consequence." I picked up a pen. I wrote 2 phone numbers on a sticky note and slid it to Julian without looking at him. "A trade school," I said, "and a financial counselor. That is the full extent of the help you will ever receive from me. If Julian wants to save this family, he can put on a tool belt and work for it the way I did." My father started to speak. I pressed the intercom on my desk. "Security," I said, "please step into my office to escort these 3 people out." They left without another word. Not because they had nothing left to say, but because there was nothing left to leverage. No guilt. No obligation. No open door. They had spent 9 summers calculating that I would be easy to set aside, and easy to retrieve. They had miscalculated both. My father lost the house 6 months later. Julian enrolled in a trades program, not because I suggested it, but because the alternative ran out. My mother, from what I understand through sources I do not pursue, has adjusted her account of my childhood depending on who she's talking to. I don't track it. It's not my story to manage anymore. Martha is still my business partner. She is 71 and has opinions about load-bearing walls that I have never once argued with. On her kitchen counter, the same one where I found that printed email when I was 15, there is a framed photo of the two of us at my graduation. It is the only graduation photo that exists of me. We are both squinting into the sun and she is holding my diploma because I handed it to her the moment they called my name. That photo is my anchor. Not the binder, not the business registration, not the duplex deed. That photo. There's something they don't tell you about being the discarded one, about being the child who gets sent away while the good furniture stays in the living room. They don't tell you that being handed a tool belt at 10 years old by a woman who actually believes in your competence is one of the rarest gifts a person can receive. My parents thought they were sending me somewhere to be contained. Martha thought she was sending me somewhere to be built. They were right about the same place and wrong about everything else. What I know now, from the materials of my own work and my own hands, is this: a structure is only as strong as what was done in the foundation phase, when nobody was watching and the building wasn't visible yet. My parents never watched. They were on a beach somewhere, taking photos of the family they preferred. But the work got done anyway. The foundation held. And when they finally came looking for the building, they found out they had no part in it. If this story reached you tonight, share it with someone who needed to hear it. Drop a comment, tell me if you were ever the one who got sent away, and what you built while you were gone. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.